Firstly, let's address the title. In English, this would be pronounced blame. However, I have found some sources listed in the description that imply it's pronounced blam. This latter pronunciation makes the exclamation point in the title make a lot more sense if it's intended to be a sound effect. I was able to dig up the creator pronouncing it as blam, so that's what I'm going with. Anyways, BLAM is a dystopian science fiction manga written and illustrated by, I hope I'm saying this right, Tsutomu Nihei, that was originally published from 1997 to 2003. This manga was developed into an animated movie and released by Netflix on its streaming service in 2017. BLAM is a desperate story of survival in a very distant, derelict future. The film features a group of human survivors that ekes out an existence in their small haven of the city, a sprawling Byzantine labyrinth of bizarre structures and buildings that extends endlessly in all directions, built God knows how long ago. When this group isn't fighting off starvation versus an ever-dwindling food supply, they are hunted down by the Safeguard, eerily human androids that have been exterminating humans for generations for reasons unknown. The fate of this group irrevocably changes the day they meet a sullen, stoic traveler by the name of Ekes, who says he's on a mission to find a human who carries the net terminal gene, something no one knows anything about. Get ready for this mouthful. BLAM is just a possible part of a possibly interconnected universe that Nihei has created, with his other major works being another manga series made into a film with Knights of Sidonia and his manga-only series by Omega. All these works deal with a distant future with transhumanist themes involving technology. The operative phrase here is possible part of a possibly interconnected universe because the connections between the different works is implied rather than stated clearly by the creator. With that said, BLAM and its core manga could be the tip of the iceberg or entire iceberg depending on how curious a fan interprets not only BLAM but Nihei's other works. BLAM sits at 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb, 7.1 out of 10 on Metacritic, and 57% out of 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. So is BLAM an excellent example of world building and a unique take on a far-flung future, or is it yet another boilerplate sci-fi dystopian story skirting on its manga and anime cred? It's worth pointing out that BLAM is done with CG animation, and some people may have an issue with this, some people may not. I personally don't give two fucks if it's hand-drawn, if it's CG, if it's painted on the wall, don't really care. If I'm watching a movie, an anime, an animation, or whatever, as long as it looks good to me, as long as it serves the story it's trying to tell, that's all that matters. Some people don't think it serves the story that well, power to them. I am not one of those people. The animation and the visual fidelity of this film are top-notch in my opinion. Film looks fucking great. The characters in this movie fall a little too much into like stereotypical tropes. Like you have the lone wanderer, you have like the village elder, you have the innocent girl. For such a unique setting that BLAM takes place in, I was expecting the characters to be a little bit more varied beyond like some stereotypical tropes. I don't really blame BLAM for using stereotypical characters, but I would have liked to see at least a couple characters that like defy like their type of mold or fall outside the beaten path. Unfortunately, didn't get too much of that in this film, but the characters that were presented, again, they were voice acted really well, they were animated very well. It just, I wish they weren't so tropey. I went into this film without a lot of research. I researched it enough to know that it was based off a manga, and I purposely wanted to go into the movie judging it on its own merits. One way to explain the story of BLAM is that it's a slice of an already ongoing story, that the story does not really hold the viewer's hand scene after scene of exposition dump. The world's presented to you, the viewer, but it doesn't do too much hand-holding, which I like. That may throw off some viewers that want more of a traditional story experience, want things explained to them more, and the viewer, it's left up to them how much they actually want to peer into the story to try to figure things out. I found that the film, it really struck a good balance between being esoteric and accessible. I think out of all the fiction I've ever read, that BLAM might actually take place the furthest in the future more than I've ever seen, and that really intrigues me both as a viewer and as a storyteller. I fucking love it. I will say the story, it suffers a little bit from like the characters being too stoic and too unreactive at times, and they're watching things transpire and they should get off their ass and do something, and that's a little bit annoying. All right, so how do I say this? As an antagonist, the movie has androids called the Safeguard hunting down humans. It did seem very peculiar to me that androids having, you know, millennia of experience hunting down humans, that they still have trouble with humans that are armed with the equivalent of spear guns. Like, you think they would have, like, you know, updated that patch by now. You might want to dodge them with your processing speed that should be far, far beyond what a human could even think of. Kind of gives me like that stormtrooper effect. Like, you have these highly trained soldiers armed with, you know, this advanced gear, but they shoot everywhere but the target. Like, there's a little bit of that going on with the androids. It wasn't so much that it took me out of the film, and I was like, oh wow, that's total bullshit. But at the same time, in the back of my head, I'm like, really, these androids haven't figured out a way around spear guns? They haven't like cracked that code yet? It's like, take that as you will. Now, this film does not really get too philosophical or existential in its narrative presentation. However, there are things that happen in this movie that at least touch upon some deeper implication. In the last review I did for the movie Gamer, I really criticized that movie for having a very great premise for parasocial relationships and touching upon something like called the ship of Theseus. BLAM raises those questions as far as like what it actually means to be a human for the viewer to at least think about, but it doesn't really dive too much into philosophy or anything like that. It at least presents it to the viewer to think about, whereas Gamer just completely glossed that stuff over as window dressing. So do I recommend this? Yes. There's only two caveats I have to append to this recommendation. One, you're okay with anime or animation, which you probably are because you're watching this fucking review, right? And two, do you like science fiction? That's it. If you are a fan of animation of all forms and you're a fan of science fiction, this is a very, very easy recommendation. It's on Netflix. If you already have Netflix, you like science fiction, like, give this a watch. It's not going to be the most amazing science fiction film you've ever seen, but when I recommended Battle Royale, I had to give a lot of caveats like, are you okay with subtitles? Are you okay with very campy / cheesy situations, etc.? But BLAM is basically like, do you like science fiction? Do you like anime? If you do, and you have Netflix, watch it. Is it worth signing up for Netflix for? Probably not. But if you already have it and you like science fiction and animation, definitely give this a watch. Easy recommendation.